Hello everyone, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. And lest I run into battery problems again, I'm just going to plug in my laptop here. Alright, now I've done some chanting on this next Go show. My concern, if I have one, is well, let me first set the groundwork. This Go show is likely to be another communication that Nichiren had with Sairenbo, the ex-priest, or the priest from the Tendai sect who converted to Nichiren's doctrine. But there are several letters. As you know, Nichiren has these different styles that he uses. Some are deeply personal, some are personal but doctrinal in nature, kind of study documents, if you will, that really explore a lot of his exploration of actual sutra and actual scholarship, with a brief layer of his interpretation. But I don't want to use the word interpretation as meaning that he deviates from the scholarship. What he's doing is making it more evident where his opinion comes from, okay? As a good academic scholar would do, right? But it would appear, like it does in many of his doctrines that, or his letters, that Nichiren is taking a teaching opportunity, and a lot of times, not always, but many times throughout all of the Go Show, when he does this, he does so to rebuke or to settle a matter of doubt, or in that vein, he uses the question and answer format. So he may be given an actual question from somebody, or he may be inventing a question that comes from the camp of somebody who is having those doubts, and then he lists his basis for his conclusion by quoting various sutras, various schools, to answer doubts and come to conclusions from that information, not his own invention. So this is actually very important to understand about Nichiren, is that he didn't pop up in history and go, Nichiren Buddhism, everybody do what I say. Not at all. Nichiren spent his entire life studying all of the sutras and commentary, as we're exhorted to by Shakyamuni, the founder, and came to understand that there were certain things throughout the teachings that if you studied all of them, bubbled up to be essentially the core of what was being taught. Not necessarily obvious in the early teachings, although the core was there as well. They may not have been elaborated in such a way as to be more directly a method for attaining Buddhahood, which was the stated purpose from the beginning, right? And when Nichiren reads all of these things and he comes to the Lotus Sutra, like the teachers before him, he finds that it's very obvious that Shakyamuni himself is saying, look, now you can discard these other teachings, not completely, but as far as the core method of how to become Buddha, Buddha enlightened in your own life, understand that this, the Lotus, is the one true vehicle, the one, not There aren't three, like earlier teachings would have you practice to attain these three different things in order to achieve your enlightenment. It's really simple. Just do this. And in that teaching, he also talks about how everyone, regardless of their status or their previous learnings and practices and prayers and methods and so on and so forth, no matter how deviant or erroneous or inaccurate their practice was, if they then turn to this simple one vehicle, they will attain their Buddhahood without fail. This is the vehicle for anyone and everyone to attain their Buddhahood. In stark contrast to all of the parameters that were around that practice from the early throughout the central teachings, all of which then can be seen with clarity to be not stages but levels of learning in order to get to this understanding that Buddhahood exists, that it already is there, that it is all around you, and that the only thing you need in order to enable it is to change your perception. And that sounds easy, but as human beings, we have a tremendous amount of obstacles we've put in our way to see clearly the Buddha realm. And all we need do, quite simply, is to clear our veils of misunderstanding and attachment and just human nature, to think more profoundly and deeply, and there it is. But to say that 2,700 years ago, when he first started teaching, just made no sense to anybody. They couldn't even relate to what he was. The fact that you could be enlightened in your lifetime was unfathomable, because everything up until that time, from the Vedas and Hinduism and other just myriad variations on those themes, all seem to talk, as to be honest, Buddhism does, about living one's life to some sort of ethic and moral was the most important thing. The merit that would have toward you becoming an enlightened being, well, we'll go to heaven, and like all religions, right? There's always this outside place, outside of our defiled human existence, where we'll finally get after we croak, and there will be the great party. And this was in India as well. So when Shakyamuni comes along and says, no, you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to die to get there. It's here right now. You can experience it right here in this moment. He was like, dude, what kind of grasses are you ingesting? What is wrong with you? Maybe all that starvation and stuff you went through kind of messed with your brain. So people had a hard time understanding, even if it seemed poetic, that could actually happen. So Buddhism goes through this arc of teaching for over 40 years as Shakyamuni travels the countryside, right? And he starts to bring these people along. Understand this first. Okay, you understand this. This will get you to Buddhahood. This will get you there. And understand this. Well, when he was saying this will get you to Buddhahood, he wasn't saying that this is the practice, that it by itself will enable you to attain Buddhahood, even in this life. Oh my goodness, that didn't happen till later, right? He talked about these concepts to keep people engaged as having that final result. But ultimately, it's not until he gets to the final 8 teaching years of his life, when he teaches the Lotus Sutra, he says, okay, now you're capable. You can understand what I'm about to tell you. And all of this stuff that you've learned, concentrate it here, because this is what I've been trying to tell you all along. Myoho Renge Kyo. This is the law of all Buddhas, the Buddhas that I've created in order to illustrate how you get here and what the teachings actually mean. It's this simple. It's this simple for anyone to attain Buddhahood. There are no obstacles other than your own human mind, your own perception. Change your perception. And so, you know, scholarship started to recognize this 1,000 years after Buddha's death. You know, people like Tendai comes along, Chi-A, I've seen his name interpreted different ways depending on where you, Tendai actually being the mountain where he established his scholarship and practice. But you know, the Tentai and later in Japan Tendai sect was all about the Lotus Sutra. But it hadn't coalesced into, they knew the Lotus Sutra was the most important. They knew that it was the one vehicle. And they devised a lot of meditations, prayers, if you will, regarding that knowledge. Dengyo in Japan, Miaolo in China, all these people that Nichiren pays great attention to their scholarship. But it's not until another 1,000 years later when Nichiren comes along and it becomes obvious to him. He's studying all of this and he's saying, well, what Shakyamuni was saying here all along is that, you know, pay attention to how this is written. Every chapter starts with Myoho Renge Kyo, the Devadatta. Myoho Renge Kyo, the lifespan of the Tathagata. Myoho Renge Kyo. And the title of it is Myoho Renge Kyo. Well, that's what he's talking about. All of this other, in the chapters of the Lotus Sutra, defined aspects of understanding Myoho Renge Kyo. Myoho Renge Kyo is the one vehicle. Come on, look, I'm not the only one. Look, I'm not the only one who gets this. This is obvious. And to help his students understand that that's it, he eventually creates this Gohonzon. That's the origin of Gohonzon, right? And if you research Gohonzon, you'll see that there are various types of mandalas that he created, all centering around Myoho Renge Kyo. And our devotion or our dedication, our resolute mind in Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, right? Early Gohonzons that he gave to certain followers or disciples just had a few other nomenclatures around them, the four bodhisattvas of the earth, the leaders, but all of them, or with the Buddha, Tahoe, and Shakyamuni. Yeah, I mean, he lifted those characterizations directly from the Lotus Sutra, the teachings of Shakyamuni. He didn't create them. He didn't invent them. His only invention, if you will, is to assemble the main characters of the Lotus Sutra, which have this huge history dating back throughout all the teachings, and assemble them in a document, make a picture of them, so that all of that scholarship could exist around and support the main point, the one vehicle, Myoho Renge Kyo. And so this is what Gohonzon is. It's an encapsulation of the entirety of Shakyamuni's teachings as they culminate into the teaching of the Lotus. Now, I'm getting a little off track from this Gosho, but I think it's important to think in that way when, as to be honest, quite nervous about reading this Gosho because it's filled with Nichiren's scholarship from the sutras dating all the way back to the beginning of Shakyamuni's teachings, because he's responding to a question from a Tendai priest who's converting. And that Tendai priest is coming with centuries old indoctrinations and beliefs and understanding that although, yes, he agrees the Lotus Sutra is the preeminent teaching, that he's, had doubts because of these other popular schools like the True Word School and the Nembutsu in that day and age in Japan. And so as he's converting to Nichiren, he not only asks questions for his own doubts, but questions because as a priest, or more accurately, a monk, priest is a Western word, but he asks these questions of Nichiren because he takes on the responsibility as a monk to also be a teacher. And he's anticipating questions from some studied people as to why the heck are you joining Nichiren? Why are you converting to Nichiren? What is it? Why don't you understand this true word teaching or this Nembutsu teaching? Why do you leave all of that and go to Nichiren? What's going on? So he's asking questions not only for his own enlightenment, but for his capability in fending off logistical attacks from other people who are obviously going to wonder why he's changing course, right? So the result in this letter is, and this is what I'm trying to prepare you for, a lot of this colorful language from previous sutras. And the reason Nichiren is quoting them is to make it obvious this storytelling, these elaborate stories of previous sutras, and that continued throughout into the Lotus Sutra, what they were actually indicating. And if you read them correctly in their proper order, it becomes obvious. So he's giving Sairenbo, we'll assume, the tools with which not only to quell his own doubts, but to become a good teacher of the doctrine. Nichiren's doctrine, yes, but Nichiren would say that his doctrine is simply the clarification of the doctrine that's been there all along. Nichiren doesn't do this as a power play. He does it as a responsibility to clarify, right? So in this way, this is why Nichiren constantly refers to himself in regards to votary or bodhisattva. But we recognize, of course, that his bodhisattva nature is fully developed and therefore has attained his own Buddhahood, his own enlightenment, remaining here for us to learn from, bodhisattva. So I know this terms and stuff, it starts to swirl around in your head, and if nothing else, this is what I'm cautioning you about. It'll be easy to get wrapped up in these characters, and that's okay, because that's what they're for. But you need to stay mindful that all of it is in service to Nichiren's doctrine of the one vehicle, Shakyamuni's doctrine of the one vehicle, but certainly Nichiren's elucidation of that point. So, with all of that blah, 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 let's begin this Gosho. It's titled On Meditation, with the parenthetical concentration and insight, which is lifted from Tendai's teachings. Tendai had several treatises on concentration and insight, which were the basis for the Tendai methods of meditation. It's an interesting title because, and this is maybe why it's seen as a possible communication to Seiden Bo, because this is Tendai thought. And Nichiren uses it to bring the student to Myoho Renge Kyo. So it's subtitled Nichiren, the Shramana of Japan. The Shramana being the Bodhisattva, the teacher of the leader of Buddhist thought in Japan. Starts right off with a question. Question. Of the types of prayer that one offers based on the teachings of the Flower Garland School, the Dharma Characteristic School, the Three Treatises School, the Three Hinayana Schools, the True Word School, or the Tendai School, which type is effective? Answer. Since they represent the teachings of the Buddha, they can all in some sense be considered prayer, meditation. But prayer that is based upon the Lotus Sutra is a prayer that is certain to be fulfilled. Okay. So again, this refers to meditations on the attainment of Buddhahood, right? So Nichiren is saying all of them can be considered meditations, Buddhist meditations, but not all of them can enable you to attain full enlightenment. This is the prayer to be fulfilled, is the Lotus Sutra, Myoho Renge Kyo, right? So we start out kind of simply. Next question, what is the reason for that? Obvious question, right? Answer. The persons of the two vehicles, learning and realization, right? What are those, the seventh and eighth worlds in the 10 worlds? The ninth being Bodhisattva and the 10th being Buddhahood. The persons of the two vehicles, though they spent kalpas numerous as the dust particles of the land practicing the sutras that correspond to the 4 flavors, could never attain Buddhahood. So he just says it. But by listening to the Lotus Sutra for just an instant, they became Buddhas. For this reason, Shariputra, Mahakashyapa, and the others who make up page-turning karma. This makes me laugh. Oh my. Make up the 1,200 arhats and the 12,000 arhats, and all the others of the two vehicles who attained Buddhahood will certainly respond to the meditations of those who practice the Lotus Sutra, and they will take upon themselves the pains of such practitioners. So these are lifted quotations from earlier sutras, right? I'll stop making excuses for it, but I just want you to understand that the more sutras you read, the more you'll see how he's just lifting these chunks of these personages and their positions and the way they respond in the Lotus Sutra. This is when he says the 1,200 arhats and the 12,000 arhats. He's talking specifically about those who appear in the ceremony in the sky in the Lotus Sutra, and those who are arrogant and walk away because they don't want to hear it. We already know. If you read the Lotus or you see my lectures on the Lotus lectures, we'll go over that in depth. Therefore, it is said in the, quote, Belief and Understanding chapter of the Lotus Sutra, the world-honored one in his great mercy makes use of a rare thing, in pity and compassion, teaching and converting, bringing benefits to us. In numberless millions of kalpas, who could ever repay him? Though we offer him our hands and feet, bow our heads in respectful obeisance, and present all manner of offerings, none of us could repay him, though we lift him on the crown of our heads, bear him on our 2 shoulders, for kalpas, numerous as Ganges sands, reverence him with all our hearts, though we come with delicate foods, and with countless jeweled robes, with articles of bedding, various kinds of potions and medicines, with ox head, sandalwood, and all kinds of rare gems, construct memorial towers and spread the ground with jeweled robes. Though we were to do all of this by way of offering for kalpas, numerous as Ganges sands, still we could not repay him. So this is again lifted right out of the Lotus Sutra, talking about these people of the two vehicles. Those who stayed in the ceremony, not the ones who left. But he deals with those as well. In this passage, this is Nichiren, in this passage from the sutra, the four great voice hearers, having heard the message of the simile and parable chapter, and learn how they can become Buddhas, are expounding on how difficult it is to repay one's debt of gratitude to the Buddha and to the Lotus Sutra. Therefore, we can understand that to persons of the two vehicles, the practitioners of this sutra are more important than a father or a mother, than a beloved child, than their own two eyes, or their body and life itself. So, these aren't literal things. You don't give your eyes to learn Buddhism. What he's saying is, how much do you value your vision? To attain this Buddhahood, to have this taught to you so that you could attain Buddhahood in your lifetime, is so immeasurably amazing that it has more value than your very own eyes. So that's what these, what do you call them? Anyway, these stories are trying to illustrate, right? Though I do not think that the great voice hearers, such as Shariputra and Madhvalyana, would actually cast aside a practitioner who praised any of the teachings put forth by the Buddha in the course of his lifetime, still it is likely that they feel a small degree of resentment toward the various sutras that were preached previous to the Lotus Sutra. Yeah, they've been practicing many years of their lives. Their practice has been based on earlier sutras, and now they're learning the one vehicle, the Lotus, Myoho Renge Kyo. And some of them might feel like, God, I've wasted all my time on this other stuff, right? This is because in them a strong warning has been given that, quote, within the Buddha's teachings they, voice hearers, are like seeds that have already been spoiled. See, that was one of the admonitions. That if you're not paying attention, then you've gone astray and you're not practicing correctly. So ouch, right? So now you're learning the one vehicle and you're like, you've already slapped my hands. Now you're telling me I've been doing it wrong. But now you're giving me the opportunity to attain my lifelong practice right now in this life. That's amazing, but still, right? But now these voice hearers have thus come ones such as flower glow, rare form, and universal brightness, a most unexpected stroke of good fortune. They must feel as though the Kunlun mountains had split open and they were able to enter those jewel-filled mountains. That is why the passage of appreciation says, quote, this cluster of unsurpassed jewels has come to us unsought. Because they were busy doing what they thought was right. And now they're getting a clarification that we weren't even looking for this. And here it is. Wow, how amazing, right? So there can be no doubt that all persons of the two vehicles will protect the practitioner of the Lotus Sutra. Even lowly creatures know enough to repay a debt of gratitude. Thus, the bird known as the wild goose will invariably carry out its filial duty to the mother bird when she is about to die. And the fox never forgets its old hillock. Sorry. If even animals will do such things, then how much more should this be true of human beings? A man named Wang Shao was traveling along a road when he became hungry and weary. Beside the road was a plum tree that was loaded with fruit. Wang Shao ate the fruit and thereby satisfied his hunger. But he said to himself, quote, I've eaten the fruit of this plum tree and thus restored my strength and spirits. It would not be right if I failed to repay this debt I owe the plum tree of gratitude. End quote. So saying, he took off his robe and hung it on the plum tree before going on his way. That was his way of honoring the gift of the plum tree. A man named Wang Yin, and again, these are lifted out of previous sutras, right? Or folklore of the day. A man named Wang Yin was traveling along a road when he became thirsty. Crossing a river, he drank some of the water, and then he tossed a coin into the river as payment for the water he had drunk. So this is illustrating that you don't just take, you recognize what is being offered. A dragon will invariably protect a monk who is wearing a Buddhist surplice. The reason is that the dragon once received a Buddhist surplice from the Buddha and placing it around its beloved child in the dragon palace was able to prevent the child from being eaten by Garuda birds. More Buddhist stories. A Garuda bird will invariably protect one who acts with filial duty toward one's parents. Dragons would shake Mount Sumeru and eat the beloved chicks of the Garuda bird after they fell from their nests, but the Buddha instructed the Garuda bird to take the offerings of rice that Buddhist monks set aside from the alms given them by filial persons, and to place these offerings on top of Mount Sumeru. In this way, the Garuda bird was able to prevent its chicks from being eaten by the dragons. So, again, I don't want you to get confused by these stories, but they are references to earlier sutra, and they'll make sense upon further study. Just understand the intent of this. He's talking to somebody who's educated in the teachings of the Buddha's life, Shakyamuni's life. So all of these will not fall upon deaf ears. Sarenbo, or whoever the Tendai person is that he's talking to, let's just say Sarenbo, will have the scholarship to understand these references, although you and I may not at the moment, but it'll come. Heaven will invariably protect a person who observes the precepts and practices goodness. If people who are born into the human realm do not observe the precepts or practice goodness, then they will die. When they die, they will, in most cases, be reborn in the realm of Asuras. So they'll be living a suffering life. And if those in the realm of the Asuras become very numerous, they will grow arrogant and will inevitably offend against heaven. So heaven being the attainment of the Buddha land, the world view that is our Buddha mind. However, if people who are born into the human realm observe the precepts and practice goodness, when they die, they will invariably be reborn in the realm of heavenly beings. And if those in the realm of heavenly beings become very numerous, the Asuras will be frightened and will not dare to offend against heaven. That is the reason why heaven invariably protects people who observe the precepts and practice goodness. So when you attain your Buddha mind, your Buddha life state, obstacles abate, and those that would attack you for being different they're not motivated to do so anymore, right? When I first moved into this neighborhood, people talked around it because I'm in the Bible Belt, so people really looked upon me as, they didn't know what I was. Buddhist, oh yeah, that's one of those weird things I've seen in movies or something. They didn't know what it was. They just knew it was different. And so they kind of shunned me for a long time. But over time, as I've practiced here and taught people here, not many people here, but people have traveled from far and wide around here to come and meet with me and talk with me. Thank you so much for those. Just the presence of Buddhahood here, the Lotus Sutra here, chanting here. I can see over the years how my neighbors have slowly come to accept me. And now we got a new neighbor just a couple of years ago who's a good friend. It's very personable. We talk occasionally, and we're just like normal people. We don't have this border between us of either misunderstanding or attitude or any of that. And I owe that all to this practice. It affects your world. As I change my world, so do I affect the world around me. I don't have to go and convert anyone, although that's part of my Bodhisattva practice, and that's what we're doing here. I'm saying locally in my area, I don't feel the need to go and teach people that they're bad, they're wrong, you're this, you're that, you have to change your ways. If I had to do that, that would be Shakabuku practice. But right now, in a shoju way, by example, I am being a teacher, and I'm softening the resolve of these people who would otherwise either be frightened of me and react very badly, or want to drive me out. So have none of that going on, and that's all because of this practice, and that's what Nichiren is referencing here. Persons of the two vehicles are more excellent in virtue gained from their observance of the precepts and more astute in wisdom than ordinary people in the six paths. Therefore, how could they possibly ever abandon those who practice the Lotus Sutra, since the Lotus Sutra is the means that has enabled them to attain Buddhahood? Moreover, although the Bodhisattvas and ordinary people had practiced the teachings of the various sutras preached in the 40 and more years previous to the Lotus Sutra for a period of countless kalpas in order to become Buddhas, none ever succeeded in attaining Buddhahood. But they were able to attain Buddhahood by practicing Myoho Renge Kyo. And now these Buddhas of the worlds of the 10 directions are endowed with the 32 features and 80 characteristics that distinguish a Buddha, and are looked up to by living beings in the other 9 realms, just as stars cluster around the moon, as the 8 mountains surround Mount Sumeru, as the people of the 4 continents look up to the sun, or as common people look up to a wheel-turning king. And is the fact that these Buddhas are looked up to in this manner not due to the benefit and blessings of the Lotus Sutra, Myoho Renge Kyo. Therefore, in the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha gives this warning, quote, "There is no need to enshrine the relics of the Buddha there." And the Nirvana Sutra says, quote, "What the Buddhas take as their teacher is the law," Myoho Renge Kyo. "Therefore, the thus come ones honor, respect, and make offerings to it," end quote. In the passage from now you can see how this is part of building the Gohonzon. It's not an invention of Nichiren's so much as it is his documentation of what is already in the teaching, right? It's not a figure of Shakyamuni Buddha that we try to reflect our Buddha nature in. It's not a relic. It's not an image of anything. It's these concepts captured in characters that we invoke the one vehicle, the law of all life processes, Buddha, Myoho Renge Kyo. In the passage from the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha is saying that his relics need not be enshrined in the stupas alongside the Lotus Sutra, and the passage from the Nirvana Sutra indicates that the Buddhas should honor, respect, and make offerings to the Lotus Sutra, not other Buddhas. So it's right there in writing. That's why he's so angry with the Nembutsu. You're worshiping Amida Buddha is not even a real person. He's a story told by Shakyamuni for you to understand what it is like to be a Buddha. You're missing it, right? The Buddhas, because they were enlightened by the Lotus Sutra, were able to attain Buddhahood. Therefore, if they should fail to preach the sutra to others, they would be withholding from others the seeds of Buddhahood and would be committing a fault. For this reason, the thus come one Shakyamuni made his appearance in this Saha world and prepared to preach it. But the devil king of the sixth heaven, otherwise known as fundamental darkness, he's telling you right there about personages. The devil of the sixth heaven isn't a real person. What it's also known as, otherwise known as, fundamental darkness. That's a nature of our own. We just gave it a name. Took possession of the bodies of all people and caused them to hate the Buddha and impede his preaching. What's fundamental darkness? None other than ignorance. So that's not a god or a deity or anything with a name, the devil of the sixth heaven. That it's ignorance. It's just given a name so you can write a story around the concept. Mental exercises, right? Thus the king known as Virodaka killed 500 people of the Shakya clan. Angulimala chased after the Buddha. Devadatta rolled a huge stone down a hill on him. Devadatta. And Chincha, the daughter of a Brahmin, tied a bowl to her belly and claimed to be pregnant with the Buddha's child. Clever humans. The lord of a Brahmin city proclaimed that a fine of 500 ryo of gold should be levied against anyone who invited the Buddha into the city. As a result, the people of the city blocked the road with thorns, threw filth into the wells, built a barricade of spikes at the gate, and put poison in the Buddha's food, all because of their hatred of him. The nun Utpalavarna was murdered. Madhyalyana was killed by Brahmins of the bamboo staff school, and Kalodayin was buried in horse dung, all because of animosity toward the Buddha. Nevertheless, the Buddha managed to survive these various ordeals, and at the age of 72, 42 years after he first began preaching the Buddhist teachings, at a mountain called Girakutta, northeast of the city of Rajagiri in central India, he began to preach the Lotus Sutra. He preached it for a period of 8 years. Then, on the bank of the Ajitavati River in the city of Kushinagara in eastern India, in the middle of the night on the 15th day of the second month, when he was 80 years of age, he entered nirvana. But before that, he had revealed his enlightenment in the form of the Lotus Sutra. Therefore, the words of this sutra are indeed the very heart of Shakyamuni thus come one. And since every single word constitutes the heart of the Buddha, Shakyamuni thus come one will protect those who practice this sutra as though they were protecting his very own eyes. He will accompany them just as shadow accompanies a body. How then could the meditations of such a person not be answered? During the first 40 and more years of the Buddha's teaching life, the various bodhisattvas had tried to attain Buddhahood through the sutras, beginning with the Flower Garland Sutra, but they were unable to do so. But when the, quote, expedient means chapter of the Lotus Sutra was preached, announcing the concise replacement of the 3 vehicles with the 1 vehicle, then the bodhisattvas seeking to be Buddhas in a great force of 80,000, the bodhisattvas of the earth, as well as the wheel-turning kings who come from the 10,000 of millions of lands, all press their palms and with reverent minds wish to hear the teaching of the perfect endowment. End quote. And when, as a result, they heard the expanded replacement of the 3 vehicles with the 1 vehicle, then it was as the sutra states, quote, when the bodhisattvas hear this law, they will be released from all entanglements of doubt, end quote. After that, bodhisattvas from this world and from other regions assembled together like gathering clouds or so many stars. And when the treasure tower chapter was preached, the Buddhas of the 10 directions gathered round, each accompanied by countless numbers of bodhisattvas. Manjushri appeared from the sea accompanied by countless bodhisattvas, and in addition there were 800,000 million nayutas of bodhisattvas, and the bodhisattvas more numerous than the sands of the 8 Ganges rivers. The bodhisattvas as numerous as the dust particles of 1,000 worlds, who emerged from the earth. This is all from the Lotus Sutra. The bodhisattvas as numerous as the sands of the 680,000 millions nayutas of Ganges River, who appeared in the, quote, distinctions in benefits chapter. The bodhisattvas multiplied 1,000 times, the bodhisattvas as numerous as dust particles of a world, the bodhisattvas as numerous as dust particles of major world systems, the bodhisattvas as numerous as the dust particles of an intermediate world system, the bodhisattvas as numerous, on and on and on, four continent worlds, and the peoples as numerous as the dust particles of 8 worlds. There were the 84,000 bodhisattvas of the Medicine King chapter, the 84,000 bodhisattvas and 42,000 heavenly sons of the Wonderful Sounds chapter, the 84,000 people of the Universal Gateway chapter, the 68,000 people of the Dharani chapter, the 84,000 people of the King Wonderful Adornment chapter, and the bodhisattvas as numerous as the Ganges sands, and the bodhisattvas as numerous as dust particles of a major world system of the Encouragements chapter. So, he's just adding up all of these people moving from earlier teachings to Myoho Renge Kyo, told and explained in the Lotus Sutra itself. If we were to count up all these bodhisattvas, they would be as numerous as the dust particles of the worlds of the 10 directions, as the plants and trees, on and on and on. All of these beings attain Buddhahood through the Lotus Sutra and are dwelling on the earth, under the earth, or in the sky of this present major world system. And with that, I'm going to take a break. And I will see you in the next one. We'll try to finish this Go Show in part 2. Thank you for participating. Take care of your health, as always. If you can support in some way, they're on my website. And as I've said before, you'll see at the end of this video. Do so just for your own practice. Otherwise, continue to watch these videos, make comments, and participate in our Sangha so we can all attain Buddhahood right now in this lifetime. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. See you soon.